Here are 5 things that I learned from Scott Adams' new book, Loserthink. Hi, thanks for watching. Today is Tuesday, Reviews Day Tuesday, where I talk about a book that I've read recently, and the latest one is by Scott Adams. It's called Loserthink. Now, this year I've been buying all my books as ebooks as I'm trying to have less stuff. But this book, after reading it, I'm kind of wish that I'd bought it, the physical version of it, because I'd like to give it to other people, and I don't know how to do that with my ebook yet. If anyone knows, let me know in the comment. If you don't know, Scott Adams, he wrote Dilbert, and in the last couple of years, he's been big talking about politics and persuasion. He has a show on Periscope that he does most days, and then he will repost that to YouTube. And so I've spent lots of hours listening to Scott talk about different things, especially dealing with the things in this book. But I'm going to give you 5 things that I learned from this book that I think are worth your time and worth looking into. Now, right off the bat, I do want to say that the idea of loserthink, it's a bit tricky because it doesn't mean that the person is thinking like a loser, okay? What he means by this is that thinking is a learned skill, and if you have a thinking pattern that is unproductive, if you have unproductive reasoning, that's what he's calling loserthink. So it's a way of thinking that isn't productive, okay? But I've got some notes from the back of the envelope, literally, of 5 things that I thought were worth your time about this book, and let me tell you about them. Now, the first one, I've heard him talk about this on his Periscope show as well, but it's in dealing with other people's embarrassment. When you see someone else do something that's embarrassing, what do you think about it? You may chuckle a little, but it's no big deal, right? And he wants you to know that that's what other people think of you. When you do something embarrassing, they don't care, right? They care nada. They do not care about it much at all. And so we shouldn't get hung up on small mistakes that we were embarrassed about, because chances are most people don't care. And I think that's a great idea, that we need to be less concerned about what other people think. The second idea from this book I thought was kind of interesting was the idea of couch lock. And this is something I'm sure you have all experienced. That's where you're stuck on the couch and you feel like you can't move, and you may have something to do. You may have something you want to do, and you just feel like you're immobile. Well, in this case, what his suggestion is just move a finger, okay? Just move your pinky, and then you can move your whole hand, and then you realize that you are actually in control of yourself. Now, this may just seem silly, but it's true. And you can follow this through with, if you have something big to do, right? Don't think about the entire thing. Think about just moving a pinky. Think about one small step that you can move toward your goal. And getting out of couch lock, I think, is an interesting idea. This is something I've actually tried. I've been stuck on the couch, and I have moved my pinky and then my hand, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I can actually move. I can get up. And I found that this was useful for myself. As silly as it sounds, it really is useful. Now, the third idea, I've heard him talk about a lot before, but to see it in print was actually good, and that's talking about a laundry list. Sometimes you will be speaking with someone, and they'll have a long list of issues about something. Say you're arguing about whatever, the president, and there's all of these issues. Scott's suggestion to do in that case is just to say, look, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every single one on the list. What is the strongest argument you have? And if I debunk that strongest argument that you have, will you reconsider looking at your other points? I think that that's a good and productive way that you can talk with someone about something. And often, if there is an argument that has a laundry list of things, usually they have a list of things because none of them are really that strong. And so this is a good defense, and it is a good way that you can talk to someone about that. Now, the fourth idea in the book that I thought was particularly interesting was the idea that when news is reported, look at it from different sources. If they're both saying the same thing, it's probably true. And if they're both saying different things, it's probably fake. So, for example, if Fox News is saying one thing, MSNBC is saying another thing, chances are neither of them is really correct. Now, the one caveat that I have with this, and this is a blind spot for Scott, I believe, is there are times when all of the networks will be saying the same thing, such as, for example, weapons of mass destruction, right? All the networks were all on board with the CIA's talking points on going to war with Iraq. And in this case, all the networks were saying the same thing, and they were all wrong. And that's why it's important to not just look at different networks, and that's why it's important to look at news sources outside of the mainstream media. They might give you a perspective that the mainstream media is lacking. Now, the fifth idea from this book that I thought was really great is about breaking news. And what he said is that often you'll hear a breaking news story and it sounds ridiculous or it sounds, crazy in one particular direction. But over the next 2 days, you hear more details, you put it into context, and it's really not a big deal. And so the suggestion is to not make any grand judgments on breaking news until you give it 2 days so you can put it all in context. I think that's a great idea, usually. Now, as someone making YouTube videos, if I wait 2 days to put things into context, to have a little nuance, I don't get many views. But if I put something out that's breaking, it tends to do much better. And that's the problem, right? Breaking news, right? Things not in any context seem to get a lot more clicks, a lot more views, a lot more eyeballs, and therefore a lot more dollars. But you're not running a network. You're just a person trying to take in the news. So therefore, you probably shouldn't jump to any great conclusions. Give it 2 days, and it'll make a lot more sense. Now, I could have done 50 things I learned from this book, but, you should read the book. So these were just 5 quick ideas that I got after reading the book. I encourage you to check it out for yourself. It's called Loserthink by Scott Adams. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you have any thoughts about this, let me know in the comments. Peace.